Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished professional from the world of photography from the UK, Ruth Davey. Ruth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. Ruth is the founder director of Look Again. She's a facilitator and trainer of mindful photography for mental health, well-being, resilience, and regenerative change. So, Ruth, before we talk about Look Again, tell me a little bit about your own background and how you got interested in mindful photography.
Well, I could spend the whole time talking about this, so I'll try and be brief.
Yes,
my background is actually community development. So I studied international development at university, and it was very much looking at a lot of the injustices between the global north and the global south, etc. That was going back quite some time. So social justice has always been really important to me. Photography has always been something that I've enjoyed. I enjoyed from a very young age. And then, to cut a very long story short, I worked for about 25 years doing community and also business development related work, mostly in the UK, but also a bit in Africa. And I wanted to bring my love of photography together with the other work. So initially it was all around helping people to tell their stories using photography.
Okay.
That's kind of how it came about. It's changed a lot since then.
I know, amazing. And how would you define mindful photography, and how does it contribute to mental health and well-being?
Mindful photography is a relatively new field in the photography field. Some people might refer to it as a therapeutic aspect of photography, which it is. But in my opinion, mindful photography is really something quite specific, and it's bringing elements of mindfulness. And we focus on the attitudinal foundations of mindfulness together with photography. And it's really about learning to see, or using our eyes, using the lens of a camera, or in this day and age, often a smartphone, to really slow down, and to really see use our environment around us to see ourselves differently.
Right.
So we learn to see with compassion. We learn to see with non-judgment. We learn to see like a child might. In mindfulness, we often refer to the child's mind or the beginner's mind. So it's bringing, and really importantly with the non-judgment. So it's not about the tech photography. It's really about the seeing and the looking and the seeing, which is why we call it Look Again, because it's, we can look and not see. But if we look and look again, then we can see.
Fascinating. Thank you. And Ruth, what is the Look Again mindful photography methodology that you have developed? And what went into developing it?
Well, a lot of the methodology has actually come from my own personal experiences. So I myself have had quite challenging mental health issues over the years. I've had experiences of anxiety and depression that went for quite some time. It was on and off, really, from when my son was born. He's now 21. And I had a breakdown in 2015, like where I could hardly get out of bed. And that lasted for some time. And it was a very scary moment. And then as part of my own recovery process from that, I thought, well, what's important to me in life? And what do I love? What makes me want to get up in the morning? And I love photography and I love nature. And I'd also got into mindfulness. So the idea was to bring those three things together. Now, at the time, I didn't think of it as being something I was going to offer to others.
Right.
This was something that I was just doing for myself.
Mm.
You know, and I got up and I went into my garden. And then I started going a bit further afield. I went up to the woods. I went up into the hills.
Mm.
And I started to realize that what I was doing was something that was really helping me personally.
Mm.
And then as I got better again, I thought, well, maybe this will help other people as well.
So, yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you.
So the methodology is something that there's quite specific. It's very simple in essence, and that's why it works. Because
Amazing.
for me, it's very much around making this as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, wherever they are in the world, whatever their circumstances, you know, whatever their lived experiences, etc. You know, whether you're the CEO of some massive corporation or you're someone who's really struggling and maybe accessing, you know, services at a very grassroots kind of level, you know, and everything in between. And of course, I've been involved in both of those worlds.
Fascinating. But let me delve a little deeper. You know, when you talk about your burnout and breakdown in 2015, which you just spoke about, how did mindful photography aid in your own recovery?
I really started to by only being able to be slow at that time. I couldn't be fast. But I started to notice with my eyes things that maybe doing other forms of photography I hadn't really noticed before. So, I mean, maybe I'll give you an example because
Yes,
that might help. I mean, this wasn't part of my plan, by the way, but I'm just looking at it, and this is what happens sometimes, right? It's like, well, what is in front of me right here, right now? So if I wake up feeling really anxious, for example, how can I use what I see to make me feel better? Okay, to reframe that experience. So I have a plant pot here. I have with a plant in it, right? It's not very happy. You can see it's not actually a very healthy plant. Okay. So I'm not ashamed of that because it's providing me with a good example. So if I see this leaf here, for example, this leaf is, you know, actually it's kind of on its way out. You know, if I pull it, it'll probably come off.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked after it very well. But if I look at this leaf and I really look at it and I kind of and I zoom in on it with my eyes and I start seeing the beauty, in the detail. You know, there's the really fine lines, there's the colors, there's the textures, there's this bit of, you know, bit at the end here that's dying off. And I'm thinking, actually, this bit there's real beauty in this bit. So as I started walking around, doing this kind of thing in my garden and around here, I started to realize that my environment had a lot to teach me about how and could help me. And so the act of then not just the looking and the seeing, but then getting in and really getting in there, and also with my camera to a point where I was really being in that moment. I was being curious. I wasn't thinking about the tech at all. And it was that thing of, okay, that is really beautiful in its own way, but it doesn't even have to be beautiful. It can be intriguing. Basically, there's something for me to learn. Yeah.
A great example.
And then, of course, the idea of then creating an image then becomes something that I can refer back to as well. So if I wake up again feeling anxious, I can look at this plant or my image of the plant and think, actually, yes, I'm feeling a bit exhausted today, or a bit tired, or a bit, you know, or seriously low or seriously anxious. But maybe I can reframe it in some way. And restory, you know, it's about restorying how I'm going to go forward. It's not just about the now. It's about how I can restory and create a new story for the future, one that's going to be a lot more nourishing and nurturing for me, but also for others.
What an amazing and what a powerful story you just shared. And so easy for our viewers and listeners to understand mindful photography. Thank you so much. My next question, Ruth, is how can leaders incorporate mindfulness and photography into their own leadership practices?
Mm. Well, I think, I mean, first of all, I think that we're all leaders in our own way, or
Correct.
we can all choose to be leaders in our own way. It took me a long time to realize that I was a leader, even though I'd been leading teams and all the rest of it for some time, but to own that and think, yeah, I'm a leader. But for me, it's always about working with, it's about power with, it's not about having, that power dynamic thing I find really fascinating. And for me, looking and seeing things differently can help leaders in terms of their own health, their own well-being.
Right.
But it can also then help them to realize that everyone in their team or in their organization, whatever the setting is, that everyone sees everything differently, and that everything can be seen differently. So I have activities whereby we use, for example, we have a glass, like an empty glass, and everyone has the same glass. But you do an activity with people, and they will all see that in that glass differently. They will all create different images of that glass, and then we have a conversation, and that leads into the fact that we all make certain assumptions about each other, about how we see what we're doing in the workplace, in the community, or whatever it is. But from a very simple, obviously there's a lot more to it than that, but from a very simple starting point, we can go into seeing how photography can help us to acknowledge and appreciate each other's perspectives, but also how we can reframe things and help people to create things that bring everyone in, that bring everyone into the picture in a way that appreciates and celebrates diversity, inclusion, and all these other things that are really, really important from a leadership perspective.
Well
And
said.
of course, leadership, often for those of us who work in the kind of more health, well-being field, so many of us are close to burnout because we care. We do a lot in the world, we give a lot. And as leaders, we often really need to build our own resilience, our own well-being as part of that process of being able to lead and work with others.
Great response.
So great
response. Thank you. A related question, and the example that you gave me with your plant, there could be many, many different forms of mindfulness in our lives, but how does incorporating nature into mindful photography enhance its benefits?
Well, there's so much research that's been done about the benefits of nature, and we don't have time to go into all of that, but and this became more and more apparent during lockdown, certainly here in the UK, and maybe in India, and I mean I know in lots of parts of the world that people were suddenly being told to stay in their homes, but go for a walk every day, or go and appreciate a tree or something, and this is something for me is second nature. It's always it's that in a way it's a no-brainer if we have the opportunity to go and sit by a tree or under a tree, it's that giving us that time to do that in a really conscious, intentional way. There's a therapeutic benefit automatically, and of course there's this this big world of forest bathing now, and ecotherapy and forest therapy, etc., which is huge. But for me, what's really important is to recognize that not everyone has access to nature easily, and not everyone actually feels safe in nature, especially that big wide wilderness kind of image of nature. So for me, that's where, it's a really important part of our methodology, is that nature can be seen and found in most places. Like a dying plant on my table, or in people's homes. nature is everywhere. If you look, you don't have to go far. It can be the little bit of grass that comes up through the paving, or the bit of moss, on a wall, or it can be literally going for a walk around your neighborhood, and noticing, maybe for the first time, that there's one tree in your street that you feel some kind of closeness to, and you actually want to go and have another look. And we can go back time and time again and see how, with time, with the seasons, and again, around the world it's different, obviously, but here in the UK, the seasons are marked. I can look out of my window here, and I can see the tree in my neighbour's garden, and see how that changes over time throughout the year, or even from day to night. And those changes can help us, if we notice them and allow ourselves to really feel them as well, maybe document them through the actual photography process. That can help us build resilience. Because we can see the ups and downs, we can see the changes from one moment to the next. And that is a really, really powerful thing. But if we walk around, rushing around everywhere with our eyes closed, we miss all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said. And Ruth, how do you use technology to enhance your own mindful photography programs?
Well, we encourage people to use whatever they have access to. So, I've got a nice laptop, etc. But I try and keep things as simple as possible. So yes, we use Zoom for our online courses. But when I go out and I do face-to-face work, I encourage people to really use whatever technology they have. So often people are just using their phones. It's not about having loads of photographic equipment. Some people do, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong about that. But often when I go into organizations or into community settings, they just use what they have. And I think that's really a really important part of the process. And we've now trained people all over the world in what we do, and it's an 8-week program which happens live on Zoom, but we also use a training platform, so all of the materials are online that they can access. But when we train people in our approach, the idea, and this is really important, is that they adapt what they've learned to suit their own cultural settings, their own communities, their own workplaces, etc., in a way that's appropriate to them. Because what is appropriate here in one business, here in the UK that I might work in, is not necessarily going to be appropriate to an organization, for example, in India, or so it's really about encouraging people to be as flexible and adaptable as they can be, whilst keeping the integrity of the work intact, because we know it works because of the way we do it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And we've spoken a lot about nature, but how do you integrate other mindfulness practices or any other therapeutic approaches with mindful photography?
Well, I mean, I myself, I've received other forms of therapy myself, but I'm not a therapist. And it's really important to it's a really key point that we always make, is that our work is not therapy, but it can be therapeutic to people. Basically, it can be beneficial. It can help to improve people's mental well-being and their sense of well-being in the world more generally. We bring in other practices that creative photography practices. We kind of blend that in. I've also done lots of training in mindfulness itself, which in itself is can be used in a therapeutic way. And of course, I bring in a lot of the therapeutic benefits of nature that I referred to a minute ago as well, using some of the research that's come from that. But I think the important point as well is that when people are doing this around the world, so for example, we've got someone, quite a few people in Australia, for example, who've done the training. One of the people is working with a lot of Aboriginal communities, offering this in that space and in that kind of context. So again, adapting, bringing in methods and other things that might be appropriate. Lots of coaches or lots of therapists do the training, so they themselves bring in their other qualifications, their other experience into the practice and adapt it accordingly. Someone that we've worked with recently is actually from Palestine, but she works in the Democratic Republic of Congo. She works with the UN, and it's very, she can adapt what she's already doing with this in a way that is appropriate. She does other forms of therapeutic work with survivors of trauma, for example. So it's very adaptable. But my role really is one of a facilitator. I mean, I'm the creator of the work, but it's very much to enable others to feel safe, but also to hold space so that we can have these amazing conversations. And everyone that does the training, they do it as themselves first and foremost, before they then go on and offer it to their communities or their workplaces or whatever. Yeah.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I have time for one more question. Ruth, what trends do you see emerging in the field of mindful photography and mental health?
So it is a growing field. Now, as far as I know, I think I'm true in saying that we are the only organization globally at present that has an evidence base for what we do. So lots of people are offering it, but some of our projects have been evaluated properly, researched by the University of Gloucestershire here, close to where we're based. And that's really important, because that's where the methodology comes in, because lots of people are offering it now, calling it mindful photography, but what do they really mean by that? And how are they doing it?
Yeah.
So the trend, I think, is that it's a growing field, and certainly with the over 120 people now that we've trained, they are, the idea is that through that community that it grows in ways that are appropriate around the world. But there's more research needed. There's a whole new area of work that I'm developing and that I've started to come out with, and it starts still off with the mental health, the well-being, being present in the now. But what really excites me, and I think what this field of photography can really help this dire situation or these various crises that we're facing globally, is that we can use our imaginations, we can use our mind's eye, we can use photography to actually help to create the future story that we want to see, rather than just accepting the story that's coming our way. So we can be active participants through photography in creating stories that aren't just future stories for us personally, but for our businesses, for our organizations, for our communities, for our families, etc. And that I find really exciting.
Ruth, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me about mindful photography. I mean, I'm so fascinated with this subject. I must read much more about this. I think this is an amazing introduction, not just for me, but for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation on how just being mindful when you are looking at anything, and then you're taking a photograph, or as the example you gave of the plant next to you, or having a second look at the tree and suddenly beginning to appreciate every little bit of that tree, or whatever we are doing in our lives, it is so important to be mindful of them, But it's been absolutely fascinating. I've learned many new things from you today. Thank you for speaking to me about Look Again, and all the very best to you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.